What is immigration trauma? So immigration is if you leave your country of origin, and you go live somewhere else. First thing, not everything is traumatic. Some people are maybe given hope, a new way to survive if they had to leave their country of origin. But what is immigration trauma, generational trauma, specifically for Filipinos? As you already know, there are so many Filipinos in diaspora. Now, I think we could separate this into categories. If you leave and it's more of your choice, maybe for a greener pasture, compared to you had to leave because maybe your family will not survive. There's a difference. The one that had no choice versus the one that is you have an option. So I might be talking more about the one in which you had no choice and but to leave your country. And even though you might have a choice, people might say, well, you still have a choice because ultimately we all have choices in life, but it's your perceived notion that you don't have any other option. Walang choice, as they say. Now, one thing that may cause that traumatic experience is that just feeling that you don't have any agency, like you were just plucked out of your homeland, and now you are living in a new place. Now, some people really would enjoy that process because they had a choice. Another one is because if your country of origin, it was just so many things that are happening there in which you feel unsafe, you might be relieved. But I'm talking about just not a refugee, but an immigrant. And here's one of the things. I too am an immigrant, if you're not aware. I was born and raised in the Philippines, and I have been living in America now for about 22, 23 years. One of the things you might want to understand, even though mine was by choice, it's really more my mom really encouraging me, is that the immigrant, regardless if they have the choice or they made this their choice, they had to leave their emotional resources. And what I mean by that is like when you wake up, you already know the smell, and that gives you comfort. Your emotional resources is knowing that you have your circle of friends, you might have a teacher, you might have your church. These are all emotional resources. When you leave as an immigrant, you also leave those behind. Now, nowadays, when I left as an immigrant, we don't have like the messenger. It's like when you leave, you leave. But I think now, maybe the pain of separation may be less painful, although it's still always painful, just because we have the technology. Secondly, you also leave a part of your identity. Um, Many people who leave may have like established jobs, or they are doctors, and then when they move to, let's say, America, they have to start from the bottom. Actually, even though I already finished school, when I first migrated to America, my first job was actually counting frozen chicken nuggets in the supermarket. um, One of my mom's advice, which if you have a Filipino mom, you need to take their advice. But one of her advice is to wag kang mamili. Everything is a stepping stone. Matutong magtiis. And I think those are very valuable to get to where I am now. It's teaching also humility. So I'm very grateful for those lessons and the reminder. Another one I did mention, you leave not only your part of your identity, your emotional resources, but also what's comfortable and familiar. Even though matraffic, medyo polluted if you're in the metropolitan Manila area, you miss things because they're familiar, not that they're the best. Um, and those are the things that you leave behind. Now, One of the things that some effects of when you miss those things and you don't replenish them in the country that you migrated to, I should say, America, Canada, wherever. Here are a few things that may come out as a manifestation when you are emotionally scarce, kulang ka sa emotional resources, you miss the things that are familiar to you. If you become a parent, you might have unrealistic expectations of your children, because my gosh, in your mind, I left the country that I am familiar with, comfortable with, even though my life is better here, for instance, in America. So it might be a manifestation that you have not replenished your emotional resources, let's say in America or wherever you are. Secondly, you might have a role reversal as far as like parents ought to be more attuned to their children, the younger the children. Of course, pag lumalaki, when they getting older, we do expect children to learn a little bit more about the grown-ups as well. But I'm talking about as children, the role of the parent is to be attuned to the child rather than the child being attuned to the parent. But if the immigrant parent is always tired, and they might start a litany of lists. Nako, I'm working here, and and you should be doing this, and so because their fuse has become so short, and it's not that they um are telling the child that they don't matter, except that makes it make except that is what they actually make the child feel, and maybe sometimes, most of the time, that's not intentional, but because they have left their emotional resources. So it's almost like you're a bateria, like a battery that's low bat. You can't recharge it. And now the role reversal is, now you're asking the child to also attune to you. Developmentally, I'm talking about younger children, when it's the parents' responsibility to recharge themselves. So, couple of manifestation. Then also the third one is the immigrant, of course, does not want their child not to belong in social groups. So they really want them to assimilate, speak only the language. Filipino Americans talk a lot about this, in which they wish they learn more about the language and the culture. But the Filipino parents, you can understand, they don't want you to not belong, which is a very painful experience in the islands, because we're very collectivistic. So they don't want that to happen to you. And yet it's very confusing too, because they want you to assimilate to the American culture, but the expectation in the family of reading cues, as ones that I talked about often in my channel, and the ebook called The Pinoy Love Languages, is that we're asking our young from here in America, Canada, wherever you immigrated to read cues that are very traditional from a Filipino cultural context. So that's how you also know that maybe either the parent has not assimilated, or they have not yeah, replenished their own emotional resources when they left the country. So how do we allow our children to blossom, right, in this new country? Um, I've already mentioned first, um, connect with other people, replicate the emotional resources that you used to have in the motherland. So it might not be the same, but whether it's church for you, or you make new friends. And I understand, I was already an adult when I came to America. So it is harder actually to make friends. So my childhood friends are all from the islands. So I catch up with them every time I am home. And it's like, we just missed 2 days. So also important to have an outlet, so that you're not putting all your energy into your child. And if the child makes a mistake, or they're not showing to be as you expected, you're not just hyper focused on them, because then that leads the child to try to be pleasing you all the time, um, being perfectionistic, perfectionism. And you know what I mean. And so and then if you did come to America when you didn't have a choice, look hard for something positive that has given you, even though in the beginning it wasn't really your choice. And then lastly, be wary of the messages that you get from social media. Um, minsan, it might just be um, many people may not understand the cultural context, and they're talking about the Filipino mom in a certain way and then the Filipino American in a certain way. And then what that creates, it continues to keep us separate. So just be weary, be curious. When people say everybody, not everybody is each one, and not everything is all things. Um, I hope I serve you today. And let me just go back. The generational trauma part there is we keep doing that from one generation. And if the young, let's say Filipino American, does not heal that, whatever they um, was passed on, from their elders, it keeps going. This generational, first, it's a generational miscommunication, and then it becomes a hurt, and the hurt becomes a deep, deep hurt. And so I hope this serve you, just being aware, um, being mindful that we have different reasoning for why we do things. Um, Learning about your own nervous system, your body. So when you speak to your mom, your dad, when you speak to your young, let's say, Canadian or Filipino American child, you understand that they are operating from a different cultural context. And just ask questions so that we could understand each other better. So I hope this serve you. Marami pong salamat sa pakikinig. This is Roanne Digia Samuels. I'm a licensed psychotherapist here in California. Ingat po. Bye.